So yeah, thank you for coming. As you can see, this is primarily about what's written. It's an installation project built as a community project from quotes, which I gathered as part of my last album project called Unspoken Words. Can we actually turn the music down a bit more? Do you know what you, because I write music, and all I'm hearing is like, oh, the mix isn't quite right, and this thing needs to be doing that, and it's sort of driving me mad. I really struggle to think whenever music's on. Some people say they use my music to, study or work to, and I always find that confusing, because, but I guess that's what happens when you make the music. So I did a project called Unspoken Words, my last album, and I was interested in what things I could express via music and arts that I couldn't put into words. And as part of that, I was looking for a way of visualizing this concept, and I came to the work of Wittgenstein about limitations of language, basically, and how language is a sort of blunt tool to, do rigorous things with. So I then chatted to Sabri here about how we could do a sort of text-based project using the Wittgenstein quotes, which was this project called Symphony in Acid, which had a real-time element to it. And from Sabri's work, he does a lot of, I'm sure you'll explain it yourself in time, but he does a lot of real-time work where he'd actually built the whole music video from a HTML system. It's his old sort of text-based coding approach. And that meant that on top of having the music video, we could have this real-time system where people could upload their own thoughts, which could then make an interactive music video. So that led to the idea of, okay, I'm doing this project about unspoken words, and people can actually upload their own words. So then I was like, okay, maybe I can turn this on its head and have people that are listening to this tell me what they want to express that they feel that they can't do in everyday life. So that was an open question, which I wrote on my website about the album. And that, I didn't think too much more about it at that point in time. It was like a nice self-contained project, this discovery. And at some point later, I came to this database of what people had been writing, basically, people that were engaging with the album. There was hundreds, or maybe 1,000 or 2,000 or so quotes on this database, and I came to it, and it was really, really intense. There was just these. I would read one quote, and I was like, wow, that's sort of fucked up, and then you read another one, and you're like, oh, that's really beautiful, and then another one, and it was just quote after quote after quote of these really visceral, sort of human existence, and it really hit me really hard, and I was like, wow, this is really special. I have to, what should we do with this? When people submitted the words, the website said, we'd like to use your words for some sort of installation or to make an art piece with, but I didn't know what that meant or what it was. So then I spent the last couple of years with these quotes, and looking through them and thinking about them and thinking, how can I represent them musically? So for example, the one that's playing now with lots of glitchy sounds, and the quote was, I exist inside this machine. It was, I can't remember the rest of the quote, but I can read it out in a minute, but it was this idea of existing, being part of this sort of mechanic, and the challenges that lead, the barrage of social media, the barrage of information, and the sort of economic systems, and that we were part of this big machine and all these clunking parts. So that led to this, okay, I have to do really abrasive, sort of clunking sounds, and really intense. And then Sabri then synced up the quotes to the music. So that was one example. And as the music plays through, I'll maybe chat a little about what the quote was that led to a particular piece of music. So that was one aspect of it. And then the other aspect was, what should we do? What can we do with this collection of this shared snapshot of our internal world? It was like suddenly getting this window into everyone's minds and these ideas that were really important to them. And actually, for me as well, finding that I could really empathize, or what people were writing, I was like, oh yeah, I felt like that at times, or I can understand that. It was all really it was surprising to me how it hit home, I guess, for me, a lot of it. And that's it, that's what the quotes are, what drives this installation, and the people that submitted their ideas and their thoughts and their words are what drives it. So, thank you to everyone that did. There's a website version where anyone that didn't submit anonymously, most of them did. Anyone that didn't, we've contacted everyone that didn't submit anonymously to ask for if they want to have their name on the website and what they want us to talk about, what they wrote. But I'm really interested, if any of you did submit words, or anyone watching this submitted words, I'm really interested to put a face to the name. If you come to a show, I'd love to hear from any of you that got involved with this, because I've spent my last couple of years with these ideas and these thoughts which came from other people, and I'd love to sort of link up who they actually are. So yeah, that's the background about this. It's going to be running all month here, and there's also a real-time, there's a QR code where you can go on the website and then you can upload your own quote, which will appear in real time on the screens. We'll turn that, at the moment it's running a sort of rendered version, but we'll turn the real time part on later. So as it runs during the month, we'll be collecting more thoughts and more quotes. And it's just this idea of making this big communal sort of snapshot of what it is to exist inside this thing we exist in. And hopefully as well it's helpful. I guess it's nice to make art projects and music, but ultimately it needs to be enjoyable or rewarding, but ultimately if it can be helpful, that's even better. And often people, I write music, which when I write music, I do it to help myself, I guess, make myself, if I'm having a hard time, music always helps me deal with that. And the really beautiful thing with this project was seeing that the way I feel about these things was getting reflected back to me in all the things that people were writing through the Last Album website. So it became a really nice sort of two-way conversation. When usually I write music and I create art projects and I sort of put them out there and I hope it resonates with people. But now I was getting the sort of resonances directly from people, and I could work with that. So it became a really interesting project for me and sort of rewarding in a different sort of way. But yeah, that's what it is. But let's chat to Sabri a bit. So should we chat about your background and where this came from? Because I think I discovered your work originally on Vimeo as a visual artist, and it was later that when we started doing projects that I realised that you were much more than a regular visual artist in terms of doing real-time things and interactive projects, and that was really integrated into your process. So maybe you can talk a bit about how you built this, or your background and how you got to where at that point.
Sure. Where to start? So I think when you contacted me for the first time, you asked me to make a music video, and I also think that was the first music video that I made. I think so, like the Hanging D video. I remember that it was a very challenging project. It took me, I think, like 4 to 5 months maybe. And I remember that working with Max Cooper is always a challenge. It always takes much more time than I expected, but it's usually worth it. Then we made the second project, the Symphony in A-Seed, a couple of years later, and that was even bigger project, I think.
Yeah, I remember you saying it nearly drove you mad, and yeah, you were terrified.
Which I also said I think that was my last music video.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna do it anymore.
I apologize.
Yeah, I think it still resonates with me. But the project was very special to me as well, because I think I used different set of skills for this one, because I do very different things in my art practice. Most of my works are like light installations, which I spend most of the time on. But for Symphony A-Seed, I had a chance to use my skills of a web developer. So in the past, from my very early years, when I was like 13, I started doing websites for money, and I did it for lots of years. I think I stopped it like maybe 3 years before we made Symphony A-Seed. So for the first time I had a chance to use the skills of like commercial work into more like art. So I also tried to do something totally opposite to what I used to do. You know, commercial websites were always about business and making money and selling some stuff, and here I could use it in totally different way, kind of like against the technique that's usually done.
Yeah, it was lovely seeing. People were always surprised that you built that whole project in HTML, which I guess is a bit of a geeky thing, but if anyone knows what that is, I used to do MySpace in HTML. It's like
kind of similar. The system is pretty simple and uses very simple technique. It's so light, the system is so light that you can even run it on mobile phone, which is cool. Like working on this project, I feel it reminds me a little bit of guest books. That was really like very old feature on websites where you could also leave your notes. I think at the beginning of internet, most of the websites they have like guest books. You can use it to leave some notes from your mind. So that's also like a little.
Yeah. And one thing to add as well, now that we've got this one, is the lines drawing in the background that you can see from Korean artist Min Jong-an. So she makes these beautiful, super detailed, sort of like technical schema almost for herself and other people. The background is actually a self-portrait. So you know, it's the vinyl cover for the album has this super detailed self-portrait, and it has all these notes about how big her foot is and how much kilograms on each foot and every vertebrae, and then there's all different types of neurons and all these pathways across. You get this really beautiful sort of science, I guess it's partly scientific, partly artistic representation of the system. So what I was interested in was this idea of, the album's called On Being and the installation is called On Being. It was the only way I thought I could, you know, how to summarize all these ideas that people were writing as, you know, as this snapshot that we've got. It for me was the one way of summarizing it, and her artwork was a way of sort of showing the system that gives rise to all these feelings and ideas that are around. So that's why the background is as it is. So yeah, many thanks to Min Jong for licensing her work. And she exhibits this piece and other pieces in museums in this huge formats. They're really beautiful pieces. I think one other thing that might be interesting is just, I mean, I'm sure you've read plenty of these quotes as they're going, but I sort of noted down a few quotes just to give an idea of whenever I was faced with this, all these things that people were writing, how to, I guess, to give an idea of the emotional weight of it, but also give an idea of how I sort of tried to approach. So the one I mentioned earlier with all the glitching sounds, the full quote was, "I exist inside this machine for a short while, constrained by its structure, somehow feeling that I am more but unable to comprehend. Then I am gone. What should I make of this?" So it was, these beautiful words. I don't know where they came from, but they're here to. I had to do something with it, basically. The one that just played, the one that just played is a really powerful one. The full quote was, "I yearn for a child. Mother Nature must have a different plan for me," which, it's such a personal thing. I actually truncated. I didn't feel comfortable using that full quote because it's a piece of music as well. I changed the quote, or I removed part of it just to, "Mother Nature must have a different plan for me" for the actual album release, because it was such a hard thing to think about and to deal with. I just felt I should be sensitive to it ultimately. Another really beautiful one, which I highlighted, which I didn't make a piece of music about, because I had to, it was challenging trying to figure out which quotes I could make pieces of music about and which quotes I couldn't. The one with the machine, with the person existing in the machine, it was like, okay, there's a lot of ideas I can work with there musically, so there was a way of translating it. Whereas some of them, like this one, I just couldn't figure out how to translate it. I feel very lonely. One hidden sacrifice made by veterans is losing touch with civilian friends due to the nature of military work. 20 years of army service and 0 close active friendships. FG, retired army medic. It's like such a hard thing to read, but such a poignant thing, and I think it's important. That's ultimately what this is about. It's important for people to be able to express these things anonymously, mainly, when they want to, or not when they don't want to. But it's just, I wanted to make a platform to do that. Hopefully that's a positive thing for us to share in, for greater understanding, particularly now with everything going on and everyone sort of butting heads all the time and all the mess. I thought it was also a fitting time to try and do something. The quotes are something like that is sad, but I feel like there's a real positive as well in just putting it out there and sharing these things, because I think it can make us more understanding of each other, even if we're having differing opinions on things. I think ultimately with this, I only had to remove maybe 2% of the quotes. It was when I had this whole database, there was hardly anything in there that was offensive or things that I didn't want to include. Obviously there was some things that were just people hitting keys randomly or whatever, and we removed those, but most of it went in there. It was really surprising how sort of beautiful and honest and sort of poignant the bulk of it was. Another one, the next one I've got on my list is, I eat everything with spoon. So it was just like, it's great. It was like, someone wanted to express that, and there's some really beautiful, funny things in there. Mazinga and Sputnik are my cats, they rule. So yeah, that's it. I think I could keep reading all these quotes and almost getting upset about it for some of them, but I think the main thing with this is to it's going to run for a month, so I'm hoping people can come in here and spend some time and then just sort of listen to the music and let it wash over and then write their own thoughts, and it's built to be experienced in that way as opposed to what we're doing now, where it's a little bit more impersonal, I guess, with so many people. But it's built to be interacted with sort of on a small scale, like a couple of people or whatever. I think that will be, as it runs during the month, it'll be not too busy for things like that, for anyone that wants to come back and spend time. But yeah, is there anything you want to chat about more about I'm trying to think if I
don't know, maybe I'll just add that that's also a good opportunity to have like a platform to share ideas or something like that. Something that you sometimes find in a toilet where people just put something on the wall. You can not only read other people's thoughts, but just share and maybe talk, kind of.
Yeah, it's funny because there's these really intense quotes. Again, one of the ones I wrote a piece of music about was this: I'm sitting in a church in Gravesend, listening to old vinyl and drinking coffee, which is this is like really down to earth, just pleasant. But I really like the quotes. I really like that mixture of, some of them are really intense or sad or brutal, and then there's really everyday ones thrown in there, because I feel like that sort of captures what it is to be human and be. A lot of the time it's just it's nice or it's mundane or whatever, or bored or whatever, and then occasionally it's horrific or beautiful. It's just the full range is in there, and that was something that struck me, and that's also why I wanted to present it in this way, because for the album, the pieces, I did 13 quotes, which I turned into pieces of music for the album, but that didn't do any sort of justice to, the collection and the feeling that you get, the message you get from the entire collection, which that's why we needed to do this. So yeah, let's get some questions, if anyone's got any questions about all this. There's a roaming mic. I'm not sure where the roaming mic is. Let's see, yeah.
Congratulations, it's an amazing project. I'm wondering and curious about your workflow, like your work process. Going from those beautiful ideas that are kind of private, seems to start in your mind, and going all the way to this really big production. Bringing different people together, and and tools, and presenting it in such space. So I'm wondering how it works going from this like private place to this very big place. And it's not the first time. You seem to be like a force of creation. You make those like huge projects. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah. I guess the core part of everything I do has always been sort of emotive message, I suppose, particularly musically. Like, I don't really stick to any BPMs or any genres or anything like that. It's more the coherent linking connection between all my music is the chord progressions and the sort of feelings that are embedded in there. And that's usually the first thing I write, and that's the sort of, when I'm writing a piece of music, it's always what's the emotional connection or emotional story, what can I communicate, how does it feel? So that in itself is an intensely personal thing. And that was also what I found, I've never been able to put that into words. I can talk about it objectively like that. I can't explain how I feel, but I can render it musically. But the thing with this was, when I started reading all the quotes, I was like, wow, people are making me feel these things by what they're writing. It was sort of coming back. But again, both ways, whether it was from what they'd written coming to me, or whether it was me writing about something, the core, the most important sort of connecting factor is just that attempt to be honest and expressive and what's the word I'm looking for? Vulnerable, I guess. Just trying to be as direct and without restrictions as possible. And that's just something I always try and do. But if you've seen my shows, you mentioned that I do a lot of big shows. I actually play a lot of shows from behind the screen. I have a big semi-transparent screen in front of me, and I try and make the visuals and the music and the story tell that, be the focus, as opposed to me being the focus. I'm not naturally suited to being here talking to you. That's not, like when I was a kid, I hated the idea that I did this for my job, but I'd be, it's insane. It's not a natural thing for me. But if I can focus on the sort of emotional messages and the ideas and the art somehow. You might notice I'm not looking at you that much when I'm talking. I'm staying, imagining that there's no one here talking about the ideas. So I guess that's how I do it. I have to trick myself into doing it, because if I don't do that, then I can't do it as my job. And I love it and I want to do it. So I have to find a way of getting over the insecurities and just, or maybe using that as as a seed. Yeah. I hope that answers.
So the collaborations kind of, help you to be surrounded. They're also kind of a screen, because you do a lot of collaborations, right?
Yeah. That's it. I couldn't do this. This is Kasori's genius and coding and his work. What I do is I write music, and I was, my background's in the sciences, and I did some coding back in the day, but so I have a sort of understanding of the technicalities, but I primarily express ideas and read a lot and write. I'm interested in aesthetics and who we are and these questions and sciences, and whenever I have an idea, I'm always in touch with lots of people, and I message Kasori and I say, I've got this idea about this thing, are you interested in helping me out with this? And he says yes or no, and then I just chat to a lot of people all the time and send a lot of ideas, and then Kasori will send me some, here's a demo, here's something I've built, and then maybe I'll feedback on it, and we bounce ideas back and forth, and often I'll change the music in response to what he or the people I'm working with, what they send me. It becomes a two-way conversation, but very much I couldn't, it's all collaborations, and I do my best to, I don't know if you notice on my socials, for example, I'll always, every time I post something, it's always like, this is who I'm working with, this is the collaborative process. But is there anything you'd like to say about this?
I can just say there is always a lot of conversation about the project at the beginning, for sure. Just a lot of exploration, just going different directions. I think Symphony and Acid started in a few different directions that were totally opposite. There's always a lot of fun in it, I think.
Yeah. And it's interesting about this idea of, I think this has come up before, like the sort of potential tension between human ideas and human expression and technology and sort of digital forms and I'm not sure I feel, because I know that a lot of people feel like that, you know, that if you make a digital piece that perhaps you're losing some of the humanity. I've never really felt like that. From the earliest time when I was interested in music, it was always electronic music that I loved. There's something about the sort of rigorous purity of it. Like when you have a synth chord progression, it can be so definite that, I don't know, maybe it's the obsessive part of me that makes me like that stuff, but I've always felt like digital works were ample for human expression. I don't know, again, that's a pretty vacuous or vague thing to try and chat about. Let's before I go on some weird ramble, so is there any other questions from anyone?
Just what you just said, really. Have you ever thought of, well, considering that your main medium has been digital, have you ever thought of exploring the robotics or even large-scale sculpture, things like that?
I mean, you're probably already doing this, aren't you? You do a lot of, because Harvard's doing a lot of large-scale sculptural. What about robotics? Are you?
Not robotics really, but yeah, more like physical things. Like still digital. It's like in the edge of digital and analog, physical. Yeah, I love it.
Because you just did the thing in New York, the Childish Gambino. You guys might have seen it. It was like this huge LED sort of three-dimensional structure with and he was singing, and then his face, and it was all sort of interacting with this big thing you built.
Yeah, so most of the works that I did in the past, they were just digital, flat on the screen, and at some point I just decided to try something that's like in real, like you can go to the space and there is something standing there. It's like a sculpture installation. So it's a little different thing than screens like that. It's not flat. It's not like megabytes that you send to people. It's not like a link or a video on YouTube. So yeah, right now I'm totally more into like physical installations.
Yeah, the one thing I also had some things with that. I mean, we did a project with Architecture Social Club, who I collaborate with a lot. They're sort of London-based design studio. We did a project called Ether, which is a sort of three-dimensional light field installation, thousands and thousands of strings and laser shading strings and this sort of extruded three-dimensional structure. The other thing that I'm really interested in and working on a lot is spatial audio and building physical structures with sound. This album actually, I worked with Richard Berkey in Amsterdam on the Atmos mix, and there will be future iterations of this project where the audio will also be spatialized. But I'm really interested in wave field synthesis and other sorts of spatial audio techniques which allow you to place sounds within the space that you can actually walk through. So you can actually have a sound source where you can walk past it. And when you have those sorts of scenarios, I've done something similar with 4D sound as well in Amsterdam in the past, where you can actually write music which is more of a sculptural form. So you're designing the music to be something that you can walk around and explore and find different types of shapes and structures within the space built of sound. So for me, I guess, when it comes to architectural ideas, that's probably the main focus that I'm working on. Yeah. Any more questions? Maybe not.